Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's Leader Talk. Today's Leader Talk is L&D's role in skills-based organizations, sponsored by Bridge, ELB Learning, GP Strategies, Interplay Learning, and Intrepid. My name is Emma. I'm a marketing associate here at Training Industry, and I'm so excited for you all to be here with us today. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to go over to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit questions in the Q&A panel. All of the questions will be addressed during the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. At the end of your time with us, you'll notice a short survey will pop open in your browser, so please fill that out and share your thoughts on today's event. As always, all of our sessions will be archived and recorded on trainingindustry.com, and you'll receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, we'd like to send a special welcome out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, our podcast, and much more. You can make Training Industry your go-to resource for learning solutions by visiting trainingindustry.com. We'd also love to hear about what you learned from today's session on social media, so please follow Training Industry on your favorite platform to share your favorite takeaways. And now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers, Karie Willyerd and Akash Savdharia. Karie Willyerd is the Chief Customer Strategy Officer for GP Strategies and Learning Technologies Group, and a fractional Chief Learning Officer in Residence for Skillable and UpLimit. A six-time Chief Learning/Talent Officer, she's the only CLO to lead two organizations to ADT's top global ranking. Akash Savdharia is an entrepreneurial technology executive with over 10 years of experience bringing software-as-a-service products to market that solve impactful data-driven problems. Prior to joining Bridge, Akash co-founded and led Payther, an AI-powered talent marketplace. Akash and Karie, we're so excited to have you here today. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Akash, I want to thank you again for being so brave to take on this topic because, leveling up your learning strategy in the AI era. And of course, we've prepared like 3 or 4 calls together, and then what happens? The whole world flips upside down in AI, and just every day you have to wake up to the news to find out what's different, don't you think?
I think everything is moving really quickly, right, Karie? You and I
Yeah.
talked a couple weeks ago, and here we are, and there's already new information for us to share with everyone. So it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yes, and I guess there's good news and bad news with this conversation because what we can now lay down as a caveat is that things might be entirely different next week. So hopefully this webinar information is good for today. And some of the things that I think you'll share will be good for longer than just today. So, but let's go ahead and tackle it from chaos to clarity here. So let's see here. Let me get my if I can get my screen to move forward. We just did this practice just a second ago, and I was having a little trouble. You are screen sharing, and can you see my screen, please, Akash?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, okay,
There we
here
go.
we go. All right, here's the topics we're going to chat about today: the role of AI and L&D, and again, a very shifting thing with so many options and change happening so fast, it's hard to decide even when to commit on what we should be doing. And along with that, there are a lot of things going on inside the demographics of the world and how skills are shifting that create a concern about will we have enough people with enough skills, even if there wasn't AI. So we've got that. And when you put those together, you have to say, well, will the reduction in talent match the increase in capability in AI? And that'll be good. We just have to have great learning and talent strategies to map it. And so I suppose anybody's guess is going to be best on that. I worked for a while as the workplace futurist for SAP. And so all futurists ever do is kind of look at what are the signals out there and kind of hope, because nobody can predict the future, but we're going to give a shot at saying, how can you prepare for the future? So just a few shifting talent trends right now, and that I think we'll cover in just a little detail. A little bit, we'll talk a little bit about what is happening in the AI revolution. And again, that is just to kind of keep us up to date on the changes there. What is the talent cliff? I'm on the board of a university, and at universities, they've been talking about the enrollment cliff for a few years now. The enrollment cliff starts this year, where there are fewer students. We'll talk about that, and then what are the matches that we need to be making in talent? So to start with that first topic on AI, as I said, one of the things that you look at when you're a futurist is what are the signals that are out there? And it's kind of hard to believe how fast AI has advanced in less than 2 years ago. But here's Ethan Malik did a prompt a couple of years ago to Chat GPT, draw a picture of an otter on a plane using Wi-Fi. And the tool was Mid-Journey, and you can see what the outputs were. Here's 4 different outputs it offered, all kind of silly. And now, this is a few months ago, it's even more advanced now. Now you could do otter on a plane using Wi-Fi, and it'll give you a video that's photorealistic. And so it's kind of hard to believe how much has changed in just the past couple of years in advances. And so whenever anybody says, well, doesn't AI have this problem or that problem, hallucinations, for example, hey, wait 6 weeks, it might be different. And so there's a lot of change going on at any given moment for us to look at. And I'm sure everybody on the call has been thinking about, how am I going to use AI first? And so I've got some options here, and we'll put up a poll on reskilling. Do you think the first area, you might be doing more than one of these, but pick one as your priority. Is it going to be working on AI specific training in order to upskill employees and your own staff? Or are you going to focus more on integrating AI tools, such as adaptive learning, to enhance your training? Or do you think you'll be using it more for analytics to personalize the learning content? Or do you think it's going to be limited impact? Are you a little bit skeptical about whether this will have anything meaningful before you retire, hopefully before the turn of the decade? Okay, let's go ahead and answer the poll. And it says, Akash, hosts and panelists cannot vote. So I guess
we don't get a say.
We don't get a say. Yeah.
All right. It looks like almost 70% of y'all have responded. So I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Get your answers in. Here are the results.
Okay. Integrate AI tools wins. Well, and if this were an election, that would be a landslide. So integrating and adopting AI-powered tools will be the number one thing. In fact, a poll that was done at the end of the year asked if people had received training on AI, and less than 13% of people have received training on AI. So it feels like it's maybe not quite ready yet. Like, we don't know exactly what it's going to be, and it's not quite ready. But I think this is interesting that the first thing we're going to be looking at is probably finding AI-powered tools, which is interesting. All right. And back. So let me I went to the TED AI conference a couple of months ago and picked up on some of the things that um, that AI is doing now, and some of these come also from Ethan Mollick's writing. And these are all research studies that have been conducted. Right now, AI is 87% more likely to persuade you in a debate than the average human, which is pretty incredible. It's also better able to get you out of a funk. So when it was put to the test of having AI try and persuade you how to reframe a tough emotional situation, it could do it better than 85% of humans. And we have to think of this as maybe debunking a little bit and unlearning what we thought AI could and couldn't do and what humans could and couldn't do. Both of these are things that we might say, oh, well, humans humans can do this better. And Natalie's asking, how did they study that? These studies are cited on the same slide from Ethan Mollick, so you can get those. And I've got the citations. These are all um, academically published studies. So none of these are just vendor studies. They are academically published studies. It is able to spark innovation. So in a juried contest of at a pitch startup looking at ideas people were proposing for new businesses, AI won more effective and faster to implement idea. And then, identifying hidden patterns. So it can spot trends that humans can't. And we were worried more about humans being able to have to watch for biases in in AI. We still do, but we can also ask it to check itself, and then it can find it better than we can in some of these biases. It can do amazing things like look at a X-ray and tell what gender and race a human is. And we as humans trained radiologists looking at the same X-ray cannot see what the AI is seeing to identify that, but it's accurate. And we don't know how it knows. So it can't tell us yet how it knows, but it does know. So there's ways in which AI is going to be training us on something we obviously already know, but haven't figured out yet. So these advances are happening on a daily basis. And this shift is happening even faster, as you saw in the news in the last few days when a Chinese firm has released a new large language model that was developed incredibly cheaper. So OpenAI was at least 100 million to create, and DeepSeek was, they're claiming 5 million. Now, there might be that it's on the backs of what's already out there and so on, to be seen. I don't think that's completely transparent, but Microsoft already surprised everybody in the last day by saying they were going to be partnering with DeepSeek because it's so fast and easy. And so I would say 3 months ago, well, actually a month ago, we would have said, well, companies won't be training their own large language models because it's too expensive. And now I think that's up for grabs. Every company may have their own completely trained from scratch LLM, every large company, that is. And all of this intelligence is leading to what might be the next phase. Right now, we're more in, very advanced narrow intelligence, which is they can do a few things like humans, or even better than humans. But we're on the verge of what you'll hear people talking about as artificial general intelligence, where these models are going to be able to do things better than most humans in many areas. and then connect together in autonomous ways. So one thing I've been thinking about lately, and I'm working on a blog on this, is as leaders, we're going to have to be able, part of being a leader is directing work. And that work has always been done through humans. But now we're going to have leaders who have to direct work that is being done by humans, work that is being done by humans who are reinforced and enabled by AI, and work that is completely autonomously done by AI. So I think there's going to be a shift in leaders' roles as well going forward, because these agentic AI, these agents that can be out there that are on the path towards AGI, are able to do work without human intervention along the way, which is, I think, really really interesting. And so now I think our learners have to learn and unlearn and relearn constantly. So it's almost like upskilling, or is not quite the word, or reskilling is not quite the, it's like there's new skilling. I think, as Elon Musk will say, L&D is where your company is going to live or die in the very near future. For example, one implication that he thinks about in skilling in our organizations is that we've always had a bit of an apprentice approach to work, particularly at large organizations, where you get out of college, you go to work, your boss gives you various assignments to help train you to learn the business, and you rotate around doing different tasks and so on. It's a bit of a apprentice. Yeah, did I say Elon Musk? I'm sorry if I said that. I meant to say Ethan Malik. That's just a slip of tongue. Thank you for noticing my slip of tongue. I meant Ethan Malik. Oh my God, that's terrible. I'm in Pacific time. It's not, my coffee is not completely consumed yet. And so one of the things that he says is AI is going to be doing some of those tasks. And if AI is doing those tasks, it's going to take away the opportunity for our people to learn through apprenticeship. So learning and development is going to have to think through, how do we upskill people quickly without having these entry-level tasks for people to do. And there's not an answer to that. That's a question posed that we don't have to solve probably even this year, but we are going to have to solve in the not too distant future. I hope I gave everybody a good laugh, and glad that they're not me at the moment, confusing Ethan Malik and Elon Musk. So I think part of this then is, thinking about what skills will remain uniquely human in the future, and are we doing enough to develop them now? And Akash, you and I have talked about this a bit, and so your thoughts on this are?
Yeah, I mean, Karie, if we really do think about what skills in the future would probably be uniquely human, I start thinking about things like leadership, for example, systems thinking, curiosity, a growth mindset. And if we kind of unpack each one of them, I think starting with leadership, right? The ability for humans to constantly inspire, motivate, unite teams, requires a level of empathy and emotional resonance that, machines aren't really able to replicate. When we think about like curiosity, just this idea where, we have this like intrinsic value of always, as humans, asking, why or what if, that has been kind of like our hallmark of innovation and discovery. And AI can identify gaps or trends, but it doesn't naturally always ask that, unless it's prompted to. And for example, growth mindset, this idea that, as humans, we can embrace these challenges, we can learn, from failures and constantly evolve, right? AI, it improves through iteration, through all the training from like the large language models, but it does have a gap when it comes to this intrinsic drive to kind of see failure as a stepping stone or adapt without being prompted. So I would say those sort of human-centric skills are the ones to continually cultivate, and that become a differentiator in the world of AI.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts from that, just to expand on a couple of those skills. For example, I read another study a couple of weeks ago, and she had asked people to evaluate. She asked a couple of hundred instructional designers to evaluate three packages of learning. One was developed by AI only, one was developed by an instructional designer only, and one was developed, no, four packages. One was developed by an SME plus AI, and one with an instructional designer plus AI. So interestingly, the worst one as reviewed by these 200 instructional designers was the one that was developed by an instructional designer only. And then the best one was an instructional designer plus AI. And then in the middle, or the other two, the middle SME plus AI was better than just instructional designer only. So to me, that says in the skills in the future, there is room for perfection in a profession. So that, there's a profession that you bring to the table and you supplemented by AI with your profession are going to be better than somebody else who's not an expert in that profession, because you're going to be able to ask better questions and you're going to be able to shape the content. Like even when the question that I used earlier as a poll that's the fourth iteration of me kind of tweaking Chat GPT to get to what I was really wanting to hear from the audience, not just some poll that would make it interactive. I really was curious where people were going to be. And so it takes really good question asking. And the second one, as an example, was a woman who inherited. I'm going to shorten this story because I know we got to get over to you here, Akash, in a second. But this woman who had a disease that just gets triggered, and so it's a very interesting story. But she and her husband quit their jobs as attorneys and both went back and got PhDs, and they've studied this. It's a prion disease. And what she found that was interesting is it's going to be easier to figure out how to solve the disease using AI. But when they lay out what it's going to take to actually get treatment in place through the health system, through doctors adopting, through all of that, that was like 75 other things. And AI wouldn't have been able to chain together this systems thinking that you were talking about, Akash.
That's
It
true.
was
Yeah.
it was, AI doesn't know our systems yet. And so, it takes a human figuring out how all these things are going to go together. So I think, I think it's going to be exciting for learning and development because we'll get to think a little bit bigger about what goes together and how do we help people really fit into an organization.
It's also using, Karie, the concept that everyone has been talking about, right? The idea of AI being kind of your thought partner and your co-pilot, and how can you refine and prompt it with context that can allow you to accomplish what you're trying to do in your job at more faster, efficient rates. That I think
Mm-hmm.
also will continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of comments coming in here, so we can maybe come back to them a little bit later, Akash. But I think I'll move ahead to just one more thing before I let you talk a little bit about, well, now what's this mean in terms of your learning strategy? And we'll come back to these in questions. But during just kind of not really in the awareness of most folks in the corporate environment today, but very aware, and universities, as they're anticipating this enrollment cliff caused by the recession in 2010. So in 2010, in the United States, in many countries around the world, not the UK, if we have people joining from the UK, because there was a bigger safety net there, there were 1 million fewer babies born in the US. So the number of 18-year-olds that will be in high school starting in 27, 28, I mean, college in 27, 28 is going to be dramatically lower. It's already starting to be lower. So there's nothing we can do to recuperate that birth rate. So we are going to have fewer entry-level employees available to us in just a few years. And as I said, colleges are planning for this, and pretty soon thereafter, the work, we'll be needing to think about that for the workforce. If we have, trades kinds of workforce, it's going to apply there as well. So I think this is also an interesting thing to be thinking about, and makes us then have to think about what our strategy should be. And so, Kash, I'll let you kind of pick up and talk a little bit about rethinking our strategy as a result of all of these shifts that are happening.
Yeah, and I like to thanks, Karie. And I think, for the folks on the call, if you're at a moment in time where you're thinking, when is it the right time for me to rethink my current strategy, or is everything working as intended? These are just a couple examples that we have seen from our work where companies really do kind of dig in and start thinking about new tools or technologies to really revitalize their learning strategy. Examples include sometimes maybe in exit surveys, you're constantly hearing from your employees, hey, we struggle to really identify where else we can go within our organization. We don't know what skills we really need to be building or developing to be successful. Or if you're hearing anecdotes around, we provide a lot of great content. We have a rich content catalog in our LMS or our learning experience platform, but the utilization of it is fairly low. And partly because we don't feel like it's targeted towards where our people want to go in terms of their career or skill goals. You might also hear things like from your workforce planning leaders, hey, today, if we wanted to understand the skills and experience of our internal talent, we really don't have a pulse on that. We don't have that data, and it's making it really hard for us to identify where we want to upskill or reskill people across our business. And finally, if you're offering a career site as a way of developing your talent, that's really just a site to offer, job openings. It's not really giving a clear picture around an employee in terms of where they can go and how they can develop skills. So these are the most common points, I think, in the last couple of years that we have been hearing that kind of like is the catalyst for you to start thinking about, your learning strategy. And then I will move to the next slide here. Then comes the part of, well, okay, we have identified that we want to rethink our learning strategy. Well, how do we design it? And one of the things that we have seen work over and over, and we'll share a case study towards the end of this slide, is anytime you're designing the learning strategy, how do you create this very powerful partnership between your employees today and your overall organization? And that type of alignment usually requires employees in this strategy constantly being able to discover the right opportunities where they can grow and develop in your company, whether that's, a new role or new skills, just being cognizant of that. And then by virtue of doing that, your organization will be able to not only have frictionless visibility of skills across the business, but you'll also be able to be more targeted, whether it's for your L&D programs or even career opportunities down the line. So at the heart of this strategy has to be a mutual alignment, not looking at it from one angle or one perspective. If we move on, I like to share with folks, there's pillars when you're thinking about a learning strategy. And some pillars, the 5 key pillars we've always seen work over and over, is starting with a very powerful kind of learning marketplace, somewhere where it's very easily identifiable for folks to find learning content based on skills, then be able to apply that learning content to understand, career paths. Where can I go next? How can I focus on the right skills? How can I then start getting feedback on those skills? So let's say I have been starting to learn and develop certain skills for maybe a role. How am I improving? And based on that type of skill feedback, how can you also design a strategy where you can give individuals hands-on experience to build skills? So some sort of internal projects or initiatives where they can maybe test drive particular roles and build the right skills, on the project, for example. And finally, how do you then also around skills connect people to the right folks internally? Mentorship opportunities have always been top down. What we have seen emerge in the last couple of years is with skills development, oftentimes people can informally raise their hand and share within your business that these are certain skills that I'm willing to, have conversation or offer informal mentorship. So how do you unlock those type of opportunities as a part of your overall kind of learning and development strategy? We typically follow this, at Bridge when we're working with customers. If I move to there we go. An example that I'd like to share with folks is this idea of a career or a talent marketplace. And the goal behind that is, it's think of it as a one-stop shop where your employees can go into a system and based on their skills or their experiences, they can see a whole different type of opportunities more pushed to them proactively as opposed to them kind of seeking them. So you can use artificial intelligence now to understand an employee's current role, their skills and experience, and start proactively nudging them and saying, hey, here's a career path within our organization based on where you're at within our business that might be interesting to you. So it's, again, sparking that curiosity for the employee to say, hey, I might be, a database architect, for example, but here are the different paths that I can take. And then don't stop there. Be able to provide the level of transparency of, well, what is entailing to getting there, right? Where quickly identify for the individual what their skill gaps are that they should be focusing on. And then taking that one step further and proactively pushing any sort of resources, developmental resources you already are offering. That could be through learning, that could be through particular training programs. But the idea is create a well-oiled machine where things are being pushed to your employees so they're constantly discovering the most relevant skills that they should be focusing on and giving them the ability to constantly grow and develop. And Karie, I think we're on a different screen. Go back to yeah, there we go. Perfect. So career paths is one angle that you can take as a part of a talent marketplace or career marketplace. The ability to then, as a part of your learning strategy, unlock new job opportunities or mobility opportunities for employees. Nope. And the third, if we go to the next slide, Karie, is mentoring. This idea that you can now also, once your employees have identified career paths, they've identified the most relevant skills now that they should be focusing on, how do you unlock people within the organization? Create a way where maybe individuals who are in the current role that employee is interested in can raise their hand, or if there's certain skills the individual employee is interested in developing, how do you start fostering those sort of connections? Again, the big difference in all of these slides I'm sharing is it's proactive. You're not having the individual employee go out and seek and find. The system is starting to understand from the individual, where is it more likely that this person wants to go and where do they want to develop? So mentoring is also a very interesting part that should be included as a part of your learning strategy. And then feedback. This is one I think it's super important. You might be able to find different career paths as an individual in your organization. You might even now be focusing on building the right skills and taking the right learning and training. But how do you know that you're getting better? Incorporating an element where you can have 360 feedback, particularly around skills, is vital. Where, after maybe you finish a learning or training program, the system can prompt your employee to say, hey, would you want to request feedback on these skills from some of the folks that you have been working with in the past, and get a gauge of, have you improved, and have that as the marker for the next sort of training or development program that you're working on. And finally, learning. This idea that you can curate all the resources that your organization has, but how do you drive the most powerful utilization? And that is, you're aligning it based on an employee's, again, long-term career goals and then short-term skill development goals. And as those resources get curated for them, the utilization, what we've seen, I'll show in a little bit, has been pretty powerful and impactful when it comes to your learning strategy. So these are things that we have seen in the last couple years be very, very powerful when organizations are thinking about a learning strategy. Not only from when's the right time, but what are the elements that we should be incorporating to see the impact. And here's a success story. So here's a business over the course of 18 months that kind of consolidated and revamped their learning and development strategy. One, and then also brought in a tool or technology. They saw results. Some of the things that I had been sharing in the earlier slides were a part of this. And immediately they were able to see about 30% faster onboarding. So employees were getting up to speed. They were understanding what career goals and opportunities that they could start striving for. It actually led, right? That type of learning strategy led for them to see about a 10% increase in promotions. Almost all of the required training was completed, very close to about 100%. And then overall, we saw a lot of productivity from L&D admins at the organization, almost a 50% reduction in overhead, just because of that idea of pushing the right type of content and material as opposed to it being more reactive from an employee's perspective. So this is something that we like to strive for and share when we're building a learning strategy. Is there should always be metrics at the end of the day. Even when you bring a tool or technology, definitely have some end goal and metrics in mind, and you should be able to measure that within 12 to 18 months. And I think that's it. I think we have some time now for questions.
Great. I have a couple. Here's one. What is the biggest mistake companies make when addressing skills gaps?
That's a great one. I think the biggest mistake, and then I'm sure Karie, you have some thoughts around this, is trying to do everything all at once. Is what we've seen. Usually, when we start engaging with customers, we say, let's first start by understanding a particular functional area or department where we can identify the most critical skills that your business needs and focus on building a learning and upskilling strategy around that. Oftentimes, the organization will want to do it, build a career framework for the whole company, and it's a pretty time-consuming process. So really focusing on the mission critical skills and starting from particular departments or roles is the most important.
Great.
Yeah, I would say I think the biggest mistake is trying to boil the ocean. So when I talk to other CLOs, it trying to categorize and put into a taxonomy or whatever kind of organizing thing you want to do and do that for every job, by the time you're done, it's all changed anyways. And so I think really having focus areas and working on the things that are really crucial to the company and getting, good wins across a broad swath of, don't just try and pilot. For example, I heard a great speaker talk about rethinking how we do pilots. And a lot of times when we do pilots in tech, we try and take a small group of people and pilot all the tech. And what he was suggesting is it's almost better to take a small piece of the tech and apply it against a larger group of people. You get better data that way. So for example, instead of trying to do everybody who works in the division of GM that builds, however they might do it, minivans, instead look at everybody who's entry-level marketing and test the skills out against that kind of a thing. So it's a very narrow, but enough people that you'll get great feedback. So, and I would focus on skills that are really critical for, they're hard to get in the marketplace, or it's a focus area for us as a company.
There's another question here that I think is interesting. This is from Barb. She says, you mentioned career pathways, but how do we train for a job that hasn't even been invented yet?
That's go ahead, Karie, and then I can.
Yeah. Well, if the job hasn't been invented yet, and I mean, there's lots of those out there, right? Like, I'm old enough to be a grandmother, and my grandchildren think influencer will be a great job, and and that didn't exist before. So there's lots of things like that, but there are skills that we know go into those. And so, for example, when you think of being an influencer, you could start to say what the skills are that go with that. You've got to have a certain set of, writing skills and graphic skills and the ability to, got to have the discipline to be posting and understanding your audience and all of that, even though the job doesn't exist. So I think I'd start to look at the skills that are emerging, and see what those would be.
I'd like to piggyback off of that, Karie. There are tools now and technologies that are showing you what's emerging in your specific company, in your industry. So, for example, you can look at, if you're in the automotive industry, some of your competitors might be hiring for a lot of software engineering roles. So you can see that there's a dynamic shift in particular skills that are emerging in your industry, which could signal to you that, oh, this is the time that particular roles need to be created, or at least there needs to be a focus on these skills. So while you might not have that role designed already yet, there are tools and technologies that can give you those market signals. But it does go back down to identifying the skills first.
Great. Great answer. We're out of time. I just want to thank you both again so much for being here. There's still some stuff going on in the chat. I'd just like to assure all of our attendees that we do send this chat to our speakers. So if there's anything that needs to be addressed, I'm sure they'll reach out to you, and their contact information will be available in the follow-up email. But again, thank you so much, Akash and Karie.
You're welcome. And Emma, I did put a link to an HBR. There was a discussion on reverse mentoring, so I put a link in here to that
Great. I'll make
article
sure
as
to
well.
include that in the follow-up email.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We're going to be taking a 15-minute break, and up next we have Matt Donovan joining us from GP Strategies. His session is called Breaking the Cycle: Rethinking Enterprise Scaling for Scalable, Sustainable Impact. In just a moment, I'm going to end this session, and you can join your next session by returning to the event lobby and going to the Sessions tab. Saying sessions a lot. I hope to see you all in the next session in about 15 minutes. Thanks, everyone.